Hey everyone, and welcome back to Paycheck Paradox, the channel that's all about investing smart on your path to financial freedom. Today, we're jumping into a really wild market event that I like to call the Venezuela Pop. It's a fascinating story of how one big news event created two totally different trades in the oil market, and it all happened in less than 48 hours. This is a perfect example of why looking just one layer deeper can make all the difference. Let's get right into it.
Now, everything we're about to cover comes straight from our newest blog post over at paycheckparadox.com. And as always, we've got a podcast version of this explainer too, if you'd rather listen while you're driving or at the gym. And of course, I gotta say it, none of this is financial advice. We're just having some fun with charts and learning from the stories they tell.
So let's set the scene. It's January 3rd, and suddenly this major geopolitical event, Operation Absolute Resolve, kicks off in Venezuela. All at once, a key oil-producing nation is in the global spotlight. In the financial markets, well, they did what they always do. They reacted, and they reacted fast.
And when I say fast, I mean this whole thing unfolded in the blink of an eye. The event happens on the 3rd. By the time the U.S. markets open for business on Monday the 5th, so-called oil stocks are just soaring. But then, just 24 hours later, by the 6th, the entire narrative had completely flipped on its head.
The first reaction from the crowd was a classic knee-jerk move. The thinking was super simple. Hey, there's conflict in a big oil country. That means instability, right? Supply could get disrupted, and that could send the price of oil to the moon. So the simple trade was buy anything and everything related to oil.
And this is pretty much what it looked like. On that Monday morning, the entire sector just lit up green. You had the giants like Exxon Mobil and Chevron jumping up, right alongside the big service companies like Schlumberger and Halliburton. It really looked like a rising tide was lifting all boats. Anyone who bought oil that morning felt like an absolute genius for about 12 hours. Which brings us to the real question here. If the story was so simple, if everyone was a genius, what on earth happened just 2 days later to completely change the game?
Because what happened next was a great divide. That single, simple oil trade suddenly fractured into two completely separate stories, each with a very, very different ending. And this is where it starts to get really interesting.
And just look at this split. It's as clear as day. Over on the left, you have the producers, your Exxons and Chevrons. Their big pop on Monday morning, poof, it completely evaporated. Some of them even ended up lower than where they started. But then, look to the right. The builders, companies like Halliburton, not only held on to their gains, they actually kept climbing. So what give?
To solve this little mystery, you have to stop thinking about oil stocks as one big group. You have to start thinking in terms of producers versus builders. They might live in the same neighborhood, but trust me, they have completely different business models. Okay, first up, let's talk about the producers. These are the companies that physically pull oil out of the ground and sell it. Their entire profit model is chained directly to the global price of crude oil. The market quickly figured out that a new, stable regime in Venezuela doesn't mean less oil. Over time, it actually means more oil flooding the market. And what happens when supply goes up? Prices go down. And just like that, their initial gains vanished. Now, let's contrast that with the builders. These guys don't sell the oil. They sell the picks and shovels. They provide the rigs, the pipes, the tech, and all the services you need to get the oil. And here is the crucial point. Venezuela's oil infrastructure was in absolute ruins. To get any of that oil flowing again, the country would have to hire these companies for a massive multi-year rebuilding project. Their business was practically guaranteed, whether a barrel of oil cost $60 or $100. This table really just puts it all together perfectly. You see, the initial logic was the same for both groups. Instability equals a higher oil price. But the underlying reality, the thing that actually matters, was completely different. For the producers, a new government meant more supply, which is bearish. For the builders, a new government meant a huge rebuilding contract, which is incredibly bullish. The final result? Well, it speaks for itself.
So, what's the big takeaway from watching this whole drama unfold? It really comes down to a simple but powerful lesson. You've got to think beyond the generic labels that the market slaps on everything. The crucial point here is that blindly buying a sector can be a huge trap. The so-called oil trade was never one trade at all. It was actually the oil price trade versus the Venezuelan infrastructure rebuild trade. They just happen to involve companies that get lumped together under the same industry name.
So this is the question you should always ask yourself whenever a situation like this pops up. It cuts right through all the noise. Just ask, who benefits from the price of the thing and who benefits from the work required to get the thing? In this case, the money was clearly in the work. Now, just for full transparency, I should mention that this was a trade I watched unfold entirely from the sidelines. And I think it's important to talk about why.
First off, I was already nearly fully invested in other positions that I really believed in. Second, I just don't have the stomach for chasing these super volatile, headline-driven events. But the most important point is this: you do not have to put a single dollar on the line to learn a priceless lesson from the market. This was a fantastic, totally free education in how markets really work.
And that is the tale of the Venezuela pop. It's a perfect reminder to always look past the headline and ask what story the market is really telling. Thanks so much for watching this explainer on the Paycheck Paradox channel. Be on the lookout for our next one, and we'll see you then.